Hey, what's going on, everybody? CBD Fishing here, and today I want to talk to you guys about jig fishing. Alright, I've been asked what kind of jigs do I like using, what kind of jig should I use, what kind of jig is out there for beginners, and basically for me, a flipping jig. Alright, flipping jig is the simplest jig to use, simply because it stays out of the trees, it stays out of the brush, it stays out of the limbs. Now, for a jig, that's actually pretty good. Now, if it was a football head jig or a round head jig, finesse jigs, I mean, they all have their troubles with that head. And what I'm talking about, I'll show you right here. I have some football head jigs. These I use for shaky headworm setups. These are made by River to Sea. Basically, with these, I don't consider this a jig, a true jig, because one, I don't have a skirt on it, and two, it doesn't have the, and you don't have to have a skirt actually, but I don't have the weedless setup on this. And with a football head jig, I don't really think it's even possible to technically be weedless, although they sell them with weedless. If you think about it, that head hits a tree stump, where is it going? Is it going to roll over it? It might. The way this football head's shaped, it's a gamble. Alright, so 9 times out of 10, you end up having a bunch of these on the bottom of the water stuck in something. So I hop these in open water and I use them as a shaky head, have a little worm up there just shaking its tail, and I bounce them along the bottom. And I don't try to throw them in any particular area where there's a lot of cover, brush piles, etc. Alright, so in talking about that, let's get into it. The jig I throw right here, a flipping jig. This is a junkyard jig. This is made by River to Sea. This is the Biffle Junkyard Jig, as a matter of fact. And basically the things about this jig that I happen to like is, see that big old fat head right there? That fat head allows it to go right over cover and slip right over cover. If you look at that profile that this thing has, this thing hits limbs and rolls right over them. It curves and rolls right over a lot of trees, a lot of junk. It also happens to be about 1.5 inches from where you tie your line tie, right here, your knot, to the curve in the back of the hook. And what's that really mean? Well, if you're looking at this jig right now, you see it has a pretty long profile. It's pretty big, right? Well, right here where my finger's sitting, that's actually where that jig's hook's at. So all of this can be shortened up, this body and this appearance. And what that allows it to do is when you're flipping and you're pitching it out there, alright, when you're bringing it back, when that fish bites this bait, he has a really short hook right here. So when he gets on, there's not a lot of room for him to try to shake loose. So especially if you're flipping, you have a really short fight from that fish. Keep in mind, when you're flipping a jig, you're pretty much fishing from anywhere from 6 feet from the boat to 12 feet from the boat, not counting the depth. So you might just be tossing it out there the distance of your living room, okay? So that fish, automatically, when he grabs his bait, it's a really close fight between you and that fish, setting the hook. That needs to be something very simple, whether you just simply reel in all your slack and slightly pull to the right or to the left. It needs to be very easy for you to get that fish in that boat, especially since a lot of times with a profile like this, you come across some larger fish. There's a significant amount of 2+ pound fish that I land off of a jig like this, and you'd be surprised that a fish 2 pounds would hit this, but it's all day. And I start out with blue and black. Alright, some other things I like about this bait are these 2 double rattle chambers. This thing makes a good bit of noise, okay? So what I do with this bait is I simply throw it out there. I'm not trying to drag this thing back to the boat slow. I don't fish a jig very slow. I go for what's called a reaction strike, and if you don't know what that is, basically when I throw this bait out there, I'm banking on a fish hitting it as it's falling to the bottom, or as it hits the bottom. I bump it once or twice and drag it, and if I don't get a strike, I start reeling it back in. What I'm looking for is when that bait hits the water, I want a fish to just grab that thing and go, and I want to set the hook and bring that fish in. A reaction strike, the fish doesn't even know what's happening, he's just hitting it out of a reaction. He's not really hungry. And when you're out there fishing, if you've ever noticed, you hear the term, oh, the fish aren't biting. If the fish aren't biting, make them bite. Give them something to react to. Aggravate them. Cause them to be a little stressed so that they want whatever you have to get away from them, or they want to eat it. Alright? So again, just my take on jig fishing and what I do. I start out with the blue and black colors. I use a Missile Baits D-bomb on the back of this. This is my go-to jig. This is what I use every time. They make this jig in 1/2 ounce, 3/4 ounce, and 3/8. I use the 1/2 ounce every single time. I don't see a need in scaling down. That whole finesse jig concept to me, if I need to go and scale down, I'm probably at that point using a drop shot and a Senko worm only and keeping it simple. Alright, what I do is I take the blue and black off and I'll go to something more natural, especially if it's clear water. This is a grass colored, crawl grass colored skirt on an Okeechobee Missile Baits D-bomb. Alright, again, Missile Baits D-bomb. The reason I like using this bait is, one, I have a lot of them because I use them on my punch rig, and I'm going to set up a video showing you guys what the punch rig looks like here in a couple of days, as well as my drop shot, some other things. But I use this bait a lot. I flip this bait quite often, and to have it as a jig trailer, to be able to toss it out there, it's a very versatile bait, so that's why I use it. Now, this bait is about $4. There's a lot of great jigs out there that are just about the same price, if not more. So I think for what you're paying for what you get, is a pretty good price. Alright, Missile Baits D-bomb on the back of this thing just kind of gives it a plus. But I look at this jig, it's a really good hook, really sharp hook. I haven't had any of these guards fall out or pull out. That's pretty unique because normally you get that in jigs. And again, they put a really sturdy paint job on the back of this thing. I've even gotten it through a couple of rocks and all I had was some chips. So that says a tremendous amount about the paint job on this jig. But hey guys, when you're fishing and you want to try to get them on reaction strike, flip a jig. Alright, some of you guys might not know what that's like. Go out there, sight fish, learn the bottom, throw a jig out there in structure where you can see what you're looking at, learn the bottom, learn to see what you're feeling, and piece the puzzle together and catch fish. Guys, keep tight lines, catch more fish. CBD Fishing, I'm out.